Good evening. Tomorrow, Monday, March 25th at 2 p.m., the Minister of Finance, Dr. Ashley Singh, will once again rise to present a national budget. Last year, you will recall the controversy that arose out of the budget, whether it had a proper focus, whether the National Assembly has any role in the budget other than, as the Chief Justice said, to approve or not approve. Already, the gloves seem to be coming off for in preparation for the debate over the 2013 budget. On Plain Talk this evening, with regular guest Raymond Gaskin, we'll be discussing Budget 2013, what a budget really means, whether our budget, in fact, over the several years, has been focusing on the problems and issues facing our society, and how he sees the debate panning out as the gloves are taken off and the boxers enter the arena. Mr. Gaskin, welcome to Plain Talk.
Thank you.
A national budget. What is this budget?
What is a budget generally? A national budget?
Yes.
Well, a national budget, most budgets are, of course, estimates of income and expenditure, whether it's an organization, a company, or a country. But in this particular case, when you're dealing with a country, a lot of policies of the government are reflected inside the budget where funds are allocated, presumably to implement those policies. So a national budget for a country is a very important document. It has to do with garnering of resources and redistribution of those resources garnered from taxpayers, grants, loans, and so on. And that in itself is a very important issue, the question of how resources are distributed.
Who in the final analysis pays for the budget? Pays for the expenditure in the budget?
The taxpayers pay for it. The taxpayers, taxes go to fund the budget, and the loans that are raised by the government to help fund the deficits, because all these budgets are in deficit all the time and are covered by loans.
You'll explain what deficit means?
That deficit is an excess of spending over intake of incomings, and the taxpayers pay for all these things. But it's always the taxpayers who pay for everything.
That itself is a policy issue, isn't it? Whether you should have a deficit budget or a balanced budget or a surplus budget.
Yeah. Well, I think for the last 20 years, or I think 30 years, as far as I can recall, looking back at the numbers, we've been running deficits all the last 30 years, as far as I can see. On the current account, on the capital, and on the trade. We've had these three deficits all the time. And because
capital account means the things like the roads,
for the infrastructure and the
yes.
big projects. And because of these deficits, especially in the current and the capital, we have to keep borrowing or secure grants to plug these gaps in the spending. So that is why the country keeps borrowing all the time, and the domestic and external debt keep growing all the time. We have a problem like that.
When you were in the Ministry of Finance, as one of the key people in that ministry, the mantra then was lean and clean, which suggests that you should have a lean budget, a clean budget. How far have we gone 20 years down the road on a budget that is characterized by lean and clean?
Well, in 1992, when I went to finance, the budget we were preparing, they prepared the budget office, had to do essentially with the requirements of the structural adjustment program. It had nothing to do with lean and clean. It had to do with the structural program. It's what they, in those days, consider sustaining the macroeconomic fundamentals of the country. And in those days, and I think up to this day...
Who said those macro?
That's IMF language, IMF World Bank language, that these repeat all the time.
But these here in 1992...
As Garali and that there.
But no why are you trying to protect
No, the
Dr.
people.
Jagan?
No,
He was the man who
he's the man who talked
created-
lean and clean. He talked lean and clean.
And he know
It's a
he
jargon
on-
phrase.
Raymond, on the Western trial, he castigated
Yes,
the
yes.
IMF.
Of course he did. You don't need to Western trial. All the Greenwich budget since ERP in 88, Jagan castigated all of that. But when he came to power in 92, he decided to run with it. So in 92, they're dealing ERP, the Structural Adjustment Program. They're dealing with exchange rate. They're dealing with inflation rate and growth rate.
Growth and real GDP.
Yeah, they ain't dealing with anything else. What they call the macroeconomic fundamentals is all, of course, we know now it's a lot of nonsense. But those are the four fundamentals they deal with. They don't deal with people. They don't deal with poverty. They don't deal with wages. They deal with exchange rate, inflation rate, and growth rate. That's what they deal with. And they consider that to be fundamentals, ERP. And Jagan ran with all that thing ever since. Although he opposed it while he was in the opposition.
Now,
Same thing with the 1980 Constitution. He opposed it bitterly. The 1992 PPP manifesto said that it will be the first order of business to change it. He never did it.
why do you think Dr. Jagan never did these things?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, why he didn't do starting with the ERP? Why he didn't do the ERP? He would have liked to do something about it, but he couldn't. With the people he put there in place, as Garali.
But he put them. So if
he put them.
If he wanted a different result, he would have put different
Oh
people.
no,
wouldn't he?
but I think it came out of the agreement with Jimmy Carter not to disturb those arrangements. Not to disturb those arrangements.
You think Jagan made an arrangement with?
Yeah, to stay with the World Bank program and the structural program.
Despite the manifesto that he said.
Yeah, he decided to stay with the Carter.
All right.
Admonitions and advice to stay with the ERP, stay with the World Bank. You'll get debt relief. Just keep doing what these people want you to do, and you'll get your debt relief.
Now, so we said the budget is essentially financing a program and projects and policies. What do you see, if you had to sum it up? How would you sum up the economic policy of the PPPC government?
Oh, in order to sum up the economic policy of the government, you'll have to look at the economy of Guyana to see where this economy is at and what policies over the last 20 years have brought us.
What policies drove that, yes?
No, well, when you look at the economy, first of all, the first thing you see is you see two economies. That's the first thing I see. I don't have my glasses here with me, but when I look at the economy of the Ghana, I see two economies to begin with. That's the first thing I see. And I see in a formal economy, a reported economy, and a very large unreported economy. They call it parallel underground.
Clive Thomas says there are two components to that. One is simply unreported, whilst the other is criminal and illegal.
Oh yes, but the unreported and illegal and criminal all form part of that second economy.
Right.
You have reported economy, and a lot of the people who are reporting in this economy are also functioning in the unreported also. Some of the people in the formal economy also have a foot in the informal, illegal, unreported, and criminalized sector of the economy. That's what I see. And therefore, I would say 20 years after 92, that's what we got. That's the first thing I see. These policies have led to that. That's what I see. The first thing that strikes me. In 92, we had a different type of problem. You had contraband, people trying to overcome the Barnum ban on food and all kinds of things up in Molson Creek and so. But
that was before 92.
Yeah. You had that type of activity going on. Some of all of that ended with the Hoyt liberalization. Yeah, but what we have now for the last 20 years is a different kettle of fish.
What's in that kettle? Tell
the kettle is cocaine. You want to know what's in the kettle? The kettle is cocaine in the kettle.
No.
And no, I'm finished. What else in the kettle?
Okay.
All the accurate estimates, if you can have an accurate estimate of gold production in this country, and I have it on the analysis of senior people at the GGMC, and I can say that openly, that the gold production in this country is about 800,000 ounces of gold now per year.
And we're declaring just about
400 by half. Yes. So a lot of it is in the gold illegal declarations. We have that in diamond too going on a lot. That a lot of it form part of the illegal, unreported, and criminalized sectors of the economy. Gold, coke, diamonds, and other things. Unreported, under-invoicing. Well, that's been going on for a long number of years. Tax evasion, tax avoidance, all of that been going on for many years. But what we have now is a large sector of economic activity in this country, which is covered by this thing. And this has to do with the workforce, to workers in those sectors. It impacts on the failure to pay NIS. It impacts on the failure to turn over PAYE, and there are a lot of other consequences that flow.
What about turning over VAT? An even bigger one.
Yeah, VAT, tax, PAYE, NIS, all of that. Because a lot of people now are functioning in those sectors of the economy, in the back dam they call it, I call it the bush, where they don't pay any of those things.
Now,
a lot of that going on.
I last year issued an open letter to MPs. I noticed General Hammond in his blog today talked about pro-poor developmental policy. The Private Sector Commission talking about a pro-growth and pro-business development policy. What would you say is the developmental model we have now?
Well, the developmental model is certainly not pro-poverty. There is no evidence that poverty is on the decline. And there's a strong evidence that businessmen are doing quite well. There's growing inequality in the society in terms of income and wealth. So that's the model we're producing, where we're promoting foreign direct investment, local investment. That's the model that this country is embarked upon. And of course, a lot of the economic activity, it's characteristic of this particular government, has to do with economic activity undertaken by party supporters, party friends, family connections, and all of that. That's a very strong ingredient we have here in this country. We see it all the time in contracts, in the radio licenses. We see it in a lot of activity. The party, the leadership, its friends, its supporters, and its family, very active in the economy and benefiting from government policy and government behavior or misbehavior.
Now, you say that there's no pro-growth, there's no...
well, we have a lot of growth there is growth in the country.
No, pro-poor.
No.
But if you look at the way this economy has gone, at least certain sectors of it, housing, far more people now own their own houses. Yes, it's mortgage, but they do have their own houses. Health, the health system, the education system.
Tell me about
more money is now being put in these sectors that largely take account of poor considerations, don't they?
Well, it is true that a lot of people own their houses now and own mortgages and so on. The government has been selling off a lot of lots, and people have taken advantage of that. But these lots are for sale, you know. No lots have been given away to anybody. You have to buy them. A lot now at the back of Providence is $1.2 million for 6,000 square foot. So that is free. The government is not giving you anything free. You pay your 1.2 million or your $500,000, whatever, you get your house out and you go borrow money and build your house. So it's a good thing in a sense. It's a good thing in a sense. And many people have been able to get it. But when you talk about health, the money spent on health you got to be careful as an accountant about money spent on something. That includes all the money spent in new GPC and Ramroop companies and all the racketeering and the corruption that goes on in the health sector. You add it up and say this is conducive to health. You should go to the public hospital if you want to know what's going on with the health service in this country and see if you get treatment there. Go to Best Hospital, go to Saudi, then you'll see about the health service. So I don't buy this idea that a lot of money is being spent on anything. It means nothing when money is being spent on anything. A lot of money being spent in education, we're told, and what is the result? Everybody wants to go to some private school or nations or something else. So the fact that money is being spent in a particular sector per se by itself means nothing.
So
you have to look at the output.
So, but are you suggesting then that the money is being allocated, but it's being badly administered?
No, it's being badly allocated too. The billions.
You think we should allocate less?
No, you talk about the health service.
Yes.
Billions.
Should we allocate less?
No. We should stop the corruption in the health sector, so we could get value for money and we could get a better health service. That's what you have to do. It's not to allocate less. It's to allocate sufficiently in order to have a functioning and reasonable health service. That's what you have to do.
Now,
But if you give one man a couple billions of dollars, one man gets over $2 billion to provide pharmaceuticals to the, what do you expect to get out of that? You get nothing out of it.
the developmental model, or certainly the economic model, seems to be let us borrow, let us spend and borrow. Are you in support of that model?
No. Why would I support nonsense and ignorance?
So what would you say?
To borrow and spend?
We should cut back on expenditure, or how do you deal with it? How do you reduce the deficit?
How
do you reduce the deficit?
The new administration came to power in 92 and found a debt of $2 billion US, I think, more or less. We've had the experience. A lot of it has been written off. They keep borrowing all the time. Borrow for everything.
That is the current administration.
Yeah, they keep borrowing for everything. You have to stop borrowing.
So,
and you're not seeing the return on all this borrowing. We're going close now to about 1.8, 1.9 billion total debt, external and domestic. Having got about 3/4 of it written off. And what can you show for it? What can you show for it? For all this new borrowing that they've had.
The government does advance all the new roads, etc. But my question to you, hold on. No, my question to you, because we're talking about economic policy, how do you restrain this deficit? What would you do? Do you increase income? Do you cut back expenditure?
Well,
because those are the options.
This is the debate you have in the United States.
No, but I'm asking you here about Guyana. How do
when
you
you talk about Guyana, you look at the revenue side, on the revenue side of the account. You're an accountant. On the revenue side, the first thing that strikes me is there's a lot of tax avoidance and tax evasion. You start there. And you have to start, and you have to look at the high rate of taxation on the ordinary people. Who are the people carrying this burden on the taxes? The system of taxation is regressive all the time. You have to look at all that. You look at the revenue side of your account. Then you look on the expenditure side of the account. You're an accountant. You have to look at both sides of the ledger, the debit side and the credit side, and see what can be done on both sides. That's how I look at it anyhow.
Do you think we have made sufficient effort to deal with both sides of that equation?
No.
And what would you do?
No.
That is different.
Well, I would say, to start with, on the revenue side, but I'm not here to give free advice to the government. But I was a junior tax officer many years ago, when I was a teenager. And I would say 50 years later, we do not have in this country, at the inland revenue, the type of personnel, the type of quantity and quality of personnel to collect the taxes due to the revenue in this country, like we had in those days when I worked as a junior clerk. We don't have it 50 years later. It's as simple as that.
No, but do you believe, okay...
and if you did have it, we'd collect a lot more revenue.
Yes,
and we'd be able to lower the tax rates.
But it is surely, it's an issue of execution and administration. It's also a question of policy that the government ought to go and ought to say, look, we need to deal more condignly with tax evasion?
They don't have people to deal with nothing. They have this, they're collecting the VAT, and since they have all this VAT coming in so easily, they don't pay attention a lot. And there's a lot of tax evasion in the VAT too, on those who make money and make profits and who should be contributing. So that's one of the power, the revenue side of it.
You will go for increasing revenues.
Increased revenue, lower rates, and better enforcement. Better enforcement and lower rates. We have to reduce the tax rates in this country for the PAYE and for the corporate rate too.
Is it not? And you keep saying I'm an accountant.
Well, you are an accountant, lawyer.
So long an accountant, I'm almost forgetting.
Because you're doing more law than accounts now. Go ahead.
But Raymond, should you, in doing a budget, you've been in management consulting yourself, in doing a budget, should you first say, look, I need to look at what is the expenditure levels I need to sustain as a government, and then decide how to raise it? Isn't that, where do you start? Do you start on the income side or the expenditure side?
You have to do both. When you prepare a budget, you have to do both. I prepared a budget many years
but
ago.
where do you?
We did Guyana budget.
So you say if you can get 100 million, you spend 100 million?
No, we're getting 180 million now, or whatever. 100 billion.
Billion, that's billion. No, I was using that. My question
I start from the proposition that if you lower the taxes and improve, we're talking the current now, separate from the capital. You lower the rates, improve collection and enforcement, you should be able to bring in another 50 billion are available to you to spend.
What we saw with the value-added tax in 2007 is once the money comes in, governments, and this has nothing to do with the PPPC, governments like to spend money. So my question is, shouldn't you first say, look, this is the ideal size of government. This is what government should be doing. This is what we should be leaving the private sector to do.
Well,
and my suggestion then is that you should look at the expenditure side.
In the United States, to get a cabinet office, you need a constitutional amendment to create a ministry down there.
To create an office here, you need parliamentary approval as well.
No, you can create a minister tomorrow here.
No, you can't. You can't. You need parliamentary approval.
So you had a minister of international economics, I think was Jeffrey. You had a minister of fisheries and livestock, came out of the blue when you wanted to create a second ministry in agriculture. And you create all these ministers and spend all this money all the time. It's all uncontrolled
So you're saying we should restrict?
Oh yeah, restrict the number of ministries in this country.
And isn't that going to tell you, having said that, you then decide, okay, now if I have, this is the ideal size of government, this is what it will cost me to finance.
And then the Constitution provides for an equitable and fair distribution of resources to the regions.
Well,
we have a regional system here too we can't get rid of. We need to look at each region individually, see what are the needs there, which region really needs what,
right.
and as part of this budget, ensure that the regions have enough resources to lift standards in the region.
Not only have enough resources, but they are allowed by law to raise their own resources.
That's correct.
Why is it, you think, 12 years after the constitutional amendment, dealing with this business of raising revenues by regions and democratic organs, the parliament has not moved to bring these instruments into being?
They don't want to do it. It hasn't been done because they don't want to do it.
Now,
because they want total control. These are centralizing people. I'm sure I said that before. They want Georgetown and the central government and the cabinet to control everything in this country. So they wouldn't give power to Region 1 and 2 to raise revenue and do things.
I am not only talking about government, Raymond, I'm talking about the National Assembly.
The National Assembly, the people, who are the people in the National Assembly?
The members of the government, the PPPC, the AFC, the APNU.
Well, it's only now in the last year or so the opposition people have some kind of thing, they can do things in the parliament, but since 92 is the ruling party, the government control the National Assembly, and if the government and the cabinet doesn't want to do it, they wouldn't bring it to the National Assembly to have it done. Simple as that. That's why it hasn't been done, and I don't know with this new parliament if it will ever be done.
If we had that type of arrangement in place, wouldn't Region 10 have been able to decide, look, we will find ways of raising our own revenues to meet some of the expenditure?
The central government doesn't want that.
No, if we had it in
Or
place.
if we had it
That's
in
my
place,
question.
if we had it in place, all the regions would be able to look at ways and means of raising revenues for developmental purposes. But it isn't there.
All right.
The government likes this system where you make these annual pilgrimages to the Ministry of Finance to beg for money. That's how they operate.
Talking about these pilgrimages, how have the pilgrimages gone this year?
But I don't
2013 budget.
know the pilgrimage. I saw a lot of pilgrims, but I don't know what came out of the pilgrimage. You go there, and a lot of what is allocated to the regions by the central government, at least most of it is already spoken for. You know, it's already statutory payments, and so you don't get, there's not much available to the regions to spend outside of what you get in there for regional health and regional education and regional this and that.
So, what seriousness do you put to this pilgrimage, as you call it?
You go to the Ministry of Finance, the budget office. You go with the you beg for money. You tell them you need to do this, you need to do it, and you'll get.
No, I'm not only talking about them. You know, on this occasion, the TUC has gone to the Minister of Finance.
But I think you mean some members of the TUC leadership met the Minister of Finance.
Along with FITUG. So the labor movement did.
The labor movement met them. But I am not aware that the proper consultations take place here with the minister and these various so-called stakeholders, I think they're called, preparatory to the budget. He doesn't pay much attention to them.
Despite the fact that
he might listen to them.
There's a requirement in the Constitution for
consultation. There's a requirement. But it's just perfunctory. I don't think he's serious about it. I don't think he intends to do all what they're talking to him about. He does what he wants to, what the cabinet and he wants to do, not what FITUG and TUC and all of them tell him. And sometimes they're influenced by the private sector commission, sometimes that has some influence. But the cabinet, the people there and the ruling party, they have their own views on what they want to do. They want to do Marriott, they put money in the budget for Marriott, or they put it for Nissel, or what they do. They do what they want to do. They don't do what TUC and FITUG want them to do. They do what they want to do, what they consider the priorities, and they do it.
I want
we
to
see
get
it
back,
all the time.
I want to get back to this developmental model, because you have the influential private sector commission, etc., being able to speak and influence the government. The TUC, the people, the ordinary people. Are they getting a say in the budget through their parliamentary representative or otherwise?
They don't. I don't think they get a lot of say in the budget, but they get a lot of encouragement and support. It may not be in the budget or in the budget speech from the government. The government is supportive of that particular crowd in the private sector commission.
No, I'm talking about overall. Not only the private sector.
You talk about the model. Have you figured out what is the model here?
Well, I'm asking you what you would consider.
There's no model here. We're told by the government they're using a low carbon development strategy. We're told there was also a competitive council strategy, whatever that means. And there was also the old national development strategy. So you have
you're saying whatever that means, but if you look at our debt, we've borrowed lots of money for each of those things.
Well, notwithstanding the existence of these so-called strategies, the government is still spending what they want to spend on and borrowing when they want to borrow. I keep telling you they have these 3 strategies in place and they're doing what they want to do. That's what I'm telling you. So the strategy is, the real strategy when you boil it down, is that this government does what it wants to do, regardless of strategy. If they believe that you need to have a Marriott, you're going to have a Marriott. And if you don't like it, that's your business. If they believe they need to have a new airport, you're going to have a new airport. If they go borrow for it, they'll go borrow for it and get it. That is how they operate.
Where should one start with formulating a strategy for a budget?
The government, or do you mean the government?
A country.
A country. Well, you know how budgets are done. You have 2 kinds of models of budget. You have
top down.
The state planning. You have the planners plan this thing. They plan everything. Like in China, there's a lot of planning.
And you're Russia.
Cuba is state planning. Everything there is planned down to the last pound of sugar. And then you have this freewheeling economy where people do what they want to do, and the government hopes that out of all this activity, they can collect so much VAT, so much income tax, so much this and so on. And then that's available to spend what they want to spend on. The payroll and this and that. They have two types of budget making, where planning is an important element, and the other element is based on estimate, I would guess, of the growth rate, production, and revenue flows,
or market forces. Let them
and all of that. You have all that. But what we have here, there's no planning here. There's no planning here. There's no planning in the budget process here.
So what function does the budget serve in this whole process?
I thought you would ask me what function state planning serves. There's something in this country called state planning.
Well, it's only on paper. It doesn't. We're told it doesn't exist anymore.
We have state planning here. But what function the budget serves? The budget serves to redistribute income and wealth in this country.
From whom to whom?
From the taxpayers who pay all of it to the people who they believe should benefit from all of this, from it. We have the case of the fiber optic cable that the taxpayers are paying for. That fiber optic cable now is going to go to help some of their friends on who are in the business of the networks. That goes for them. It's as simple as that.
All right.
That's how I see that as one area of redistribution
I'll ask you for some more examples, but for now, the operators are signaling that we must take an ad break, so we shall do so. Welcome back to Plain Talk as we discuss Budget 2013, which comes up for presentation tomorrow, March 25th. And I'm speaking with Mr. Raymond Gaskin. Yes, you're talking about redistribution.
Yeah, the budget does redistribute the revenues of the country received essentially from the taxpayers into many areas where a lot of the friends and family and supporters benefit. That happens. We see it in agriculture a lot. Agriculture gets a large share of the revenues of this country. I don't know how much tax they pay. I know rice is doing well at about 400,000 tons. And they get a lot of support from the treasury, from the budget. And I don't know what they contribute. Gaisuko is getting a lot of support from the budget, billions and billions of dollars, to keep, as Robert Prasad once said, every single person employed in the industry. So there's redistribution. The funds are taken from the budget, from the taxpayers, and given to these entities, to agriculture, to sugar, to the pharmaceutical companies, and to the fiber optic people who will use that, to the people who need to do the radio stations and the TV and all of that. The funds come from the taxpayers. Where else can you?
But of course, Raymond, taxpayers are all companies are also taxpayers.
The companies are getting a break. They get a break all the time. I told you because
pay considerable amount of taxes.
Some of them pay. I don't know any one of them who pays everything they're supposed to pay. But some of them pay, a lot of them don't pay. There's a problem with the tax system in this country. The taxes are far too high for the ordinary worker who has to pay 33 1/3% after the threshold.
Is it
and they get the duty free. The duty free and the tax free now run into billions of dollars every year for a lot of people. Billions of dollars are relinquished and given up.
Tens of billions.
In duty-free and tax-free allowances. So they get it. The ordinary worker doesn't get anything. And what the worker gets here, this economy is essentially still a low-wage economy. Low wage, low productivity. And the government has a plan to keep it that way. Keep public service pay low, which serves as a kind of barometer for wages in the society, except for those who are in contracts. And this is a low-wage economy and is deliberately kept like that. Low wage, low productivity. That's what you got here.
So you
watch the private sector commission. They put out a big thing of what they want done. What they want done? They think it's a great idea to keep the VAT at this exorbitant rate. They think the government should pay to build all the interior airstrips and roads for the tourism sector for them. They believe.
But isn't it also to make it accessible for the ordinary person?
For me to go where?
No, the persons living in those
To
communities.
go to Arrow Point?
If somebody gets sick in that area, shouldn't they be able to get?
Those roads are not built for sick people. Those roads are not built for sick people. Then the private sector commission believes that the taxpayer should go and bridge the Dumbra River, so everything could come in nicely for the shipping companies. When the private sector commission talks about what they would like to get, it strikes me that only they're a pack of hypocrites. I think they're dishonorable people and they're selfish. All they want is for themselves.
You're talking
and they
about
believe
what we call the captains of industry.
Well, captains. They believe the VAT must stay like that. The high tax rates to the ordinary worker must
They
stay like
believe the
that.
personal allowance is adequate for many years to come, for years to come.
They believe that the wage levels, the low wage economy we run in, all that is great. I find they're not a nice set of people, you know. Who is the chairman of the private sector commission now?
That's Mr. Ron Webster.
Oh, Webster, yes, I think I know him.
But they're also asking for a reduction in the rate of personal tax from 33 and 1/3%.
On the PAYE?
Yes.
To what? So 33 to
28.
What? To 28 for the personal. It used to be 20 and 33 now, years ago. They've abolished the 20 rate, we're back to the 33 rate. What else they're asking for? You familiar with that, what they want?
Well, isn't it? No, it's not at least a pro-worker.
No, they also benefit from all that. Don't forget, when a top, the so-called captains of industries earn all these millions and millions, and their rate is reduced from 33 to 28 for them. That's big. When a policeman and a nurse and a teacher earning 50, 60,000, but you're not talking much there. You're not talking much. There ought to be a general reduction in rates, generally, for everybody, accompanied by stronger enforcement and collection methodology. And the abolition, I would call for the total abolition of all this duty-free racketeering that goes on in this
And
place.
lowering of the tax rates as a consequence of that.
Yeah, abolish the duty-free allowance altogether, duty-free, tax-free, lower the rates and improve enforcement.
You appreciate that there might be some difficulties with some of those imports, because if they come under particular government-to-government arrangements, the host country can't charge taxes on it.
For example,
Well,
if the ambassador, if a foreign ambassador wants to import a motor car,
No,
into
we're
Ghana,
talking about if the government says, if they enter into an agreement with the European Union, look, we're gonna help you protect the seawalls from the oncoming ocean.
Okay, they're going to help you protect. And I want to import a bulldozer or a caterpillar. So why have to get this thing duty free?
No, if they make that a condition, I'm only saying that you may have some issues in particular areas of imports, but as a general proposition, you're saying
I would say tax everybody, and then maybe they can apply for a rebate. Tax everybody and do it on a rebate and a refund system. Tax everybody. Abolish all this thing about tax-free, duty-free. Abolish all of it.
when I have a different set of problems with the.
Do you get tax-free on your car?
No, sir.
Oh, good. But a
No,
lot
sir.
of people get. A lot of people get. Yeah. So
That's why my car is what 1980 something.
I don't know. You got a new Benz out there.
That's
right?
not a new Benz, Raymond.
I don't know.
No, my problem is the lack of depth and intellectual thought in some of these submissions that are made. Oh, just tax rates.
No, because this government, since President Ramattar came to power, he did announce the establishment of some committee to look at tax reform with Clifford Reese and I think Ronald Lally and some other gentlemen. They never met. They've never met. They never produced a report. They're not serious about these things. They just talk about it. They're not
You think Ramattar is serious? You think President Ramattar is serious?
On what? Tax
On
reform?
tax
The answer is no. No. Because he created this committee
And
since
if
he
they're
came
not
to
working,
power.
what should
It
he
never
do?
ever worked. He should scrap it and get proper people who could come up with tax reform. No, he's not serious. If he were really serious, he would have, after a year and nearly a half in his administration, he would have been able to come up with something by now. They're not serious about tax reform. They're not. They haven't been serious for 20 years about serious tax reform. If they were serious, they'd get it done. They're not serious. The big tax reform they've done in this country is to soak you with the VAT. That's the big tax reform. The Jagdeo tax, the VAT.
And again, the private sector is saying that, look, when you introduce the VAT, you said you will lower taxes, so lower it for us.
Oh, but they believe the VAT should stay just where
Yes,
it is.
that's what they said.
I think Webster once said that VAT is a luxury tax. I don't know what he means by it. I don't know. He said.
Are you sure?
Yeah, he said VAT is a luxury tax, so it should remain how it is.
So if you go into to buy one of these restaurants and buy food, that's
now you go to the restaurant,
that's
you go to the grocery. You go to the grocery and you pay VAT on a lot of items.
you buy
inside the
items
grocery.
for your house.
He says it's a luxury tax, so you shouldn't trouble it. You should trouble it. But there is serious need for tax reform in this country, which essentially has to do with lowering of rates and improvement of enforcement. It's a simple formula.
But
it's done in Canada, it's done in the United States all the time. You know, and you're familiar with the international accounting. In the United States, nobody fools around with the IRS. They're serious people, they're well-staffed, they have a lot of professional taxmen, they come after you. Here we don't have that. We don't have that.
Now you're saying that, look, we need to get tax reform.
Yes,
but if the problem is both sides of the budgetary equation, expenditure and income, how do you deal with the other side, or the problem of the other side? Tax reform could deal with the revenue side. How do you deal with the expenditure?
Oh, well, on the expenditure side, we have to cut expenditure and start balancing the budget, rather than borrowing all the time to cover the deficit.
But now you raise another very contentious
How many
issue.
ministers and ministries we have in this place? I think I told you once we were talking, we have 4 ministers at the Ministry of Local Government. And we have 1 minister for 2 ministries. And we have 2 ministers at the Ministry of Agriculture. And 1 minister at the big Ministry of Health. And a lot of nonsense and confusion. All that needs to be tidied up.
How do you do it? Is the question how?
They can do it. I can do it if I had the authority. I'll just cut it. I'll just do it.
Well, Raymond, you can't do it. You're not in Parliament.
No, I'm not there. But the wage bill with all these contract workers, and the advisors and the millions they get all the time, but a lot of it is wasted. A lot of wasted in the hospital, in the pharmaceuticals, all over, waste and corruption. Corruption costs, you know. Corruption costs you in dollars. I don't know if you know that. You know that.
Of course it does, of course.
It's a very costly, corruption is a very costly thing. So if you're looking at the expenditure side, there's a lot of work to be done on the expenditure side.
Well, now, Parliament tried to do that last year.
Which Parliament?
The National Assembly.
Oh,
So-
you mean with the cutting of the thing?
With cutting of the budget. And the Chief Justice acting said, no, you can't do that.
Well, I think the decision of the couple of things about that decision, of course. One of the problems is that it was a kind of a temporary decision, and the matter has been taken to its final conclusion to get a real answer to the question. I think you should really get a final answer to the question and take it to Kingston and take it to Trinidad. If you need an answer on such an important fundamental issue, a matter like that should go, I would say, to the CCJ for a definitive answer.
No, but just go to the court. Let the court
deal with it.
Because the two, if I may, the two defendants in the matter, the Speaker of the National Assembly and the leader of the APNU, they didn't pursue the case to finality, did they?
Well, am I surprised? I'm not surprised. But it should go there. These important constitutional cases should go to not just one judge, a whole panel of judicial minds to pronounce upon it. And I guess the only place you can get that pronouncement, really, if you take it to Trinidad. That would be my opinion. So it should go there. I don't agree with the decision of the Chief Justice. People still debate.
You've read the Constitution.
You read the Constitution a lot. I read the Constitution.
Is that decision based on the Constitution?
I think that the National Assembly, the flaw in the reasoning of the Chief Justice, he said in his decision that what the National Assembly was trying to do is to make its own estimates, to determine and approve its own estimates. I think he's profoundly wrong there. The National Assembly, in seeking to cut couple items, was not attempting to make its own estimates. The minister produced estimates. They were seeking to do what they call like amendments, if you want to, or alterations.
Which is provided for under the Constitution.
I think in 171 talks about alterations and amendments.
And it's also provided for under the standing orders of the National Assembly, which are recognized in the Constitution.
As part of the whole constitutional
framework.
So I think he erred. That's my opinion. And I think the matter should have been taken further. I really do believe, and in his ruling, he said that the National Assembly has the function of gatekeeper. Gatekeeper. So I looked to the dictionary to see what is a gatekeeper. It's not a local word. And they said the gatekeeper is the person who keeps the gate at a place or at a zoo. Well. Now the gatekeeper is the person who keeps the gate at a zoo. Well, I don't know if he means that thing is a zoo. But the Constitution does not give the National Assembly any role of gatekeeper. It said the National Assembly is responsible for the approval or, as a corollary, disapproval of the budget. It is the keeper of the purse, not the keeper of the gate.
Does it bother you? And
all these things bother me. Go ahead.
No, let me finish my question, please. Does it bother you? An unelected acting official of the court can make such a profound ruling that affects the representatives of the people in national
but if
elections.
the so-called representatives of the people are too lazy to pursue it further, then that's what happens. That's what happens. If the representatives just take it there, they get a ruling that they're not having, they just leave it there.
But it wasn't even a ruling.
Well, it's an interim decision on
a single issue.
Yeah.
The single issue was in relation to the ERC, if you recall.
Yes, but if the so-called representatives of the people don't want to pursue it, well, what can you do? And in terms of the ERC, I read his ruling on the ERC. He said that, and that is right, that once the Constitution sets up an institution, the National Assembly must vote the resources.
It doesn't vote on it.
That's correct. The National Assembly must vote the resources for the institution. However, I was thinking about this. If the ERC does not exist at the present time, I do not believe that there is any obligation in the National Assembly to vote anything for it. You don't have an ombudsman, so there is no obligation to vote money for the ombudsman, although the Constitution requires it. You don't have a procurement commission, so there is no obligation to vote money for that either if it's not in place.
So you're saying by analogy,
yes,
you should not vote money for the ERC?
If it's not in place. The Constitution did not have in mind that these institutions will not be in place. And if it's not in place, you don't have to vote money for it.
All right. You have heard Dr. Roger Lunch.
I mean, they talk about some secretariat. In his rule, they talk about funding of some secretariat.
That's not a constitutional body.
The Constitution doesn't talk about no secretariat for nothing.
You would have heard Dr. Ashley Singh, Dr. Roger Luncheon, Mr. Anil Nandalala, I'm sorry, pronounce on this issue of the budget cuts and say the Chief Justice has in fact ruled that the opposition can't cut the budget.
No. The ruling, the temporary ruling of the Chief Justice, it's just temporary. It's not a final decision. It has to go to get a final decision of the courts. In my opinion, in this place called Guyana, to get a real proper final decision on anything, you have to take it to Trinidad, where you get a panel of independent judges to pronounce on a matter based on law. That's my opinion.
So, okay, we will soon have a debate in the National Assembly on the 2013 budget. I think the Speaker of the National Assembly has said he's arming himself for this. In the light of the ruling by the Chief Justice, by the court, what do you think the parliamentary opposition should do if it continues to have to finance 4 ministers in a ministry?
Reject the budget in its entirety and do not attempt to change anything, any line item. Reject the thing in its entirety. The way the firearms bill was rejected, send the whole thing back to be reworked. because the government has not seen it fit to consult with anybody properly over this budget. And therefore, I would think the correct thing to do is not to fool around with these individual items, is to reject the entire thing and send the whole thing back until they can straighten the whole question of NISL, which is fundamental and non-negotiable. The monies that NISL command all the time, this second consolidated fund, this second treasury that NISL fools around with all the time, until and unless they can bring that in some order, the lottery funds and the slush funds, it is my opinion that the parliamentary office should reject the entire thing and not seek to change no line on it. Reject the whole thing the way the firearms bill was rejected, and then they do it over and bring it back and have the consultation. You don't want to consult, reject the whole thing.
Now, Raymond, you know that under the Constitution, after 4 months, you can't have temporary funding after 4 months. You can only spend out of
the minister come in the last week of the 3rd month and bring the thing. The last week of the 90 days that he's allowed in the new fiscal year. So who's to be blamed for that?
All right. No.
It's
it's not an issue of blaming, but what I'm getting at the implications. So, you vote against the budget
in its entirety.
In its entirety. What happens next?
You hold consultations with both sides, the way they're trying to do it in the United States, and come up with something, mature men sitting around a table, do it over, fix it, and bring it back and get it approved. That's what you do. That's what you do. And while you're dealing with this thing, you deal with this question of NISL too. You bring all these slush funds into the consolidated fund, yes. And then you bring it back and you get it approved by everybody. And life goes on. Reject everything. The only way you're going to get the government to sit down and deal with NISL and the lawlessness that takes place in this country is to reject the thing in its entirety. And you have to come and sit around a table. You don't want to do that? Well, that's your business, comrade.
Do you see the parliamentary opposition
doing that?
Being courageous enough?
I don't know. What I know of them inside there, I don't know if they have that testicular armamentarium to reject the whole thing out of hand. Send back the whole thing. The way they send back Rohi bill. But I don't think they should just send back Rohi bill. They should send back anything they don't agree with. Not just Rohi. Whichever minister bring it. Send it all back. Do it over. Bring it back. Consult with the people.
Well, if you look, and Raymond McRae...
Oh, poor Rohi. Just Rohi getting blows. Go ahead.
Raymond McRae is publishing its response to the budget, and it will be in the Stabrook News on Thursday. Probably going to be out before then.
You should have breaking news. You should have breaking news Monday afternoon on CCTV or something.
Parliament, in fact, this National Assembly only passed and had assented to 10 bills for the whole year. Yeah. 4 of them being financed. Not
so much work they did. I didn't know they did so much work. I'm surprised they did so much work. How much recesses they have, they call, and breaks and so on, vacation and Christmas and Easter and New Year. I guess they'll get Easter break again. They're not working. This is not a working parliament. And this is not a working parliament, right. You know.
No, well, their output, if you judge by output, it's pretty poor. It's the worst. Now, what I did, I went, we had Court of Policy before.
You go back there.
I have gone back 300 years. Yeah. We have never had a situation where fewer pieces. Admittedly, in the old days, a lot of things used to come from the mother country. We have never had a situation where only 10 pieces of legislation...
The white people used to work more hard, The white people used to work hard and try to see if they could run this colony and get it running properly.
So what happened with these people?
I don't know. These here, a lot of the time in this present parliament, they've had this obsession with Rohi. They're not getting anything done.
All right. Now,
they're not getting work done.
So... let's take
that. Could you imagine listening to Ashley sing Monday for 2-3 hours? Oh God, he droning on endlessly. They have a lot of patience there. I don't think I could do that,
Well, it's...
Can you sit for 3 hours and listen to that?
I'll be on a plane.
Oh, you'll be on a plane. Well, you're lucky.
Now, we talk about the opposition saying, look, we reject your whole budget.
I think they should.
Now, you know that one has, the most the government could do is the contingencies fund. And there are very strict rules on the contingencies fund. What next? If agreement can't be reached between the opposition and the government, what's the recourse?
Well, the minister will say that he can go to the contingency fund because there's an urgent need.
But only up to the extent of 2% of the prior year spending.
Well, he can go to the thing, I don't know. He will have to, if his budget is defeated and we don't have a budget, I think we'll have to go to the electorate for a mandate. And I think it's time for us to go to the polls again.
Deliberately, I phrase the question that way, Raymond, because to have a government out, barring that possibility you mentioned, requires a motion.
To remove the government.
Government, yes.
Yeah, on the 106.6, yes.
But in this case, the government can't function because it doesn't have money. It can't spend any money after the 4 months. And assuming the contingencies fund is exhausted.
I think the National Assembly, maybe under 216 or 280, they have the kind of power to allow some spending while you have an election, so the next 3 months, next quarter, I think so. I think they would have that kind of power for temporary spending.
This puts us into really
new territory,
uncharted waters, isn't it?
But I think the National Assembly will have the authority to avoid what they call a shutdown of the government, which they talk about a lot.
You know the problem, our Constitution
didn't envisage
this kind of story.
Yeah, because we didn't envisage it at all.
And we say you can only, and certain articles of the Constitution require 2/3 and all of that.
Yeah. We could be in big trouble. But I still believe that, as the Chief Justice said, the National Assembly has the power to approve or disapprove. And you don't approve of it, you don't like what's there, when you disapprove of it, you reject it. It's simple as that.
But apart from the budget, did you see, and do you see, that the opposition has failed in not setting some markers as to what we must have in order for us to approve the budget?
Yes, I think the opposition has failed abysmally. Up to now, they can't tell you what are the 10 non-negotiable things that they want. Up to now, they can't tell you that.
Do you think they know 10 things?
I don't know how much they know. I don't know how much they know. And I don't know what school they've been to. But by now, they should have been able to set out that these are the 10 things we want. These are non-negotiable, Minister. Now, if you don't bring it in your budget, we will send it back. They haven't been able to set it out clearly. There was a letter, I think one of the big parties wrote a letter to the minister without setting out in clear language what are the things that have to be there, non-negotiable. They haven't been able to do it up to now.
And you remember, this one I remember in particular, during the budget debate 2012, Minister of Foreign Affairs Carlin Rodriguez gave a commitment to the National Assembly. Procurement Commission would have been set up by June 30th, 2012.
I remember that.
It hasn't happened.
It ain't going to happen. It is not going to happen until the entire budget is rejected. It's not going to happen until the entire budget is rejected. You're not going to get any of these things. You're not going to get NISL fixed until you reject the entire budget. You're not going to get no procurement fixed until you reject the entire budget. You're not going to get the question of allocations of resources to the regions fixed until you reject the entire budget.
Well, you may say that given what you have just said, this question is superfluous and it's moot. What do you expect this minister, what striking feature do you expect coming out of this budget 2013? Forget that the opposition should vote it down.
Oh,
you have 1.5 minutes.
The feature of the minister, he will say everything is bright. We're doing well. We're building the Marriott, we're doing the hydro, which is another big problem. We're getting a new airport, we're borrowing more money. We get CCTV, we get Chinese news every day. Everything is going. We have good production with rice. We get good production with gold. We're doing well with diamonds. Everything is going well.
Do we understand that the law limits how much this country can borrow? Do we know that?
I think they know that.
But surely, the minute that a Myla Falls agreement is signed, we will have gone past the borrowing
Oh
threshold.
yes, oh yes. The Milo fall, we didn't get time to discuss that. I told you the total of Milo will come in with interest of over 2.2 billion US over 20
You
years.
also said it's going to destroy this economy.
It destroy the economy, it will destroy the GPL, and rates will have to go up. Anytime you do 165 megawatts or 2.2 billion US with interest, electricity rates will have to go up.
Mr. Raymond Gaskin, thank you very much for appearing on Plain Talk, giving us, as usual, your very frank discussions, giving some advice there to the various parties in all this budget issues. Operators and viewers, thank you. Good night.